latest on the Ukraine crisis now and the millions who have fled the Russian invasion?
Well, 22,000 refugees have applied to join a family here in the UK, with potentially many thousands yet to do so. But despite the British government's promise to help those displaced by war, so far only 850 of those have been processed by the UK.
So if you compare that to our European neighbours who've waived visa restrictions and welcomed hundreds of thousands of families into their homes.
Right, we're expecting to hear a statement from the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, on the situation in just a moment.
Those are live pictures now from inside the House of Commons. Camilla Tominey and Tom Sawbridge have thankfully stayed with us. If that statement begins, obviously we'll cross straight to it if it fits within the time. We have, you know, sort of hopefully jiggled ourselves a little bit here to get it in. Tom, we were talking before about the fact that it would appear to be a bureaucratic shambles. Some have said that it is utterly heartless. The government really getting a bit of a hard time, particularly the Home Office and the civil servants here who are sorting to put. Well, I was watching Question Time, Nadeem Zahawi last night saying he mentioned that word surge, people being bolstered. And we don't seem to have seen anything of that. You've got lines of people standing outside in Rzeszów yesterday in Poland. People looked like they were going into some sort of restaurant type of thing. And then, yes, we'll start your paperwork and you come back in a fortnight. It appears to be a shambles.
I'm not going to surprise anybody, I don't think, by saying, having worked in government for a couple of years, that things go wrong in government quite a lot of the time. Stuff that you want to happen as a minister doesn't quite get off the ground as quickly as you would like, and it takes quite a bit of effort to force things through and make things happen. But what's happened here, I think, is that a week and a half ago, the Home Secretary stood up and told the Commons of the world...
Tom, hold on a second. We knew this would happen. I think Priti Patel's speaking.
As the House knows, the UK's humanitarian support for Ukraine has been developed following close consultation with their government and governments in the region. On the 4th of March, I launched the Ukraine Family Scheme. It applies to immediate and extended Ukrainian family members, and everyone eligible is granted 3 years leave to enter or remain. Today, I want to set out further changes I'm making to the process to make it quicker and simpler. I have two overreaching obligations. First, to keep the British people safe. Second, to do all we can to help Ukrainians. No Home Secretary can take these decisions lightly, and I'm in daily contact with the intelligence and security agencies who are providing me with regular threat assessments. What happened in Salisbury showed what Putin is willing to do on our soil. It also demonstrated that a small number of people with evil intentions can wreak havoc on our streets. This morning, I received assurances which enable me to announce changes to the Ukrainian Family Scheme. Based on the new advice I have received, I am now in the position to announce that vital security checks will continue on all cases. From Tuesday, I can announce that Ukrainians with passports will no longer need to go to a visa application centre to give their biometrics before they come to the UK. Instead, once their application has been considered and appropriate checks completed, they will receive direct notification that they are eligible for the scheme and can come to the UK. In short, Ukrainians with passports will be able to get permission to come here fully online from wherever they are, and will be able to give their biometrics once in Britain. This will mean, Mr. Speaker, that visa application centres across Europe can focus their efforts on helping Ukrainians without passports. We have increased the capacity at those centres to over 13,000 appointments per week. And this streamlined approach will be operational as of Tuesday, the 15th of March, in order to make the relevant technology and IT changes. I will, Mr. Speaker, of course, update the House if the security picture changes and if it becomes necessary to make further changes to protect our domestic homeland security. Threat assessments are always changing, and we will always keep our approach under review. In the meantime, Mr. Speaker, I once again salute the heroism of the Ukrainian people.
Vivek Cooper.
Right, so let's pick that apart a little bit now. So it would appear a lot of people have been saying that what you need to do is you need to get those people here first and then begin the process. That if you have got... watching the Ukrainian ambassador last night on television saying that the vast amount of people coming out are women and children.
Yeah.
But the Home Secretary did say there that she wanted to keep British people safe as well as welcoming.
Sure. Also, anyone under 60 has to go and fight if they're male. The point is of this, I think, the lack of biometrics means that if you have a passport, you have the papers, then you can apply online and get in. I thought she was also going to announce that as well as people with settled status in the UK, that she would also allow those who are on temporary visas, student visas, working visas, which would extend the 40,000 that are currently in the UK able to bring over relatives by another 20,000. I thought she was going to extend it to invite them.
Can I just ask Tom, what she's talking about here is 5 days' time. That is a long time to wait for those families that have already been waiting there for so long.
I'm going to put my neck on the line here and say this is going to have to change again, because what she's just announced isn't going to do the job. The idea that the security situation changed in the last few days to mean that suddenly people with Ukrainian passports didn't have to have biometric tests. They could just use their passports, for which they would have been security checked anyway in order to have it, is absolutely farcical and probably very deeply cynical. And the idea that it's going to take another, as you say, another few days. So we're now 2 weeks beyond the original announcement that this is going to come into place, so that the computer systems could be got right, so that administrative staff could get there. Well, let's judge them on the evidence of what's happened with the administration of this over the last 10 days. And it's been an absolute crock of steaming, it's been appalling. In normal times, a Home Secretary would have resigned about this because it's been that bad. And I'm afraid we're not in normal times, and this is not a particularly normal government.
But also, you could apply exclusively online. It's going to take you 5 days to get a result. Where are you going to stay? It's freezing cold. What do you do with your family in those 5 days? What do you eat? Also, online. What if you fled Ukraine with your kids and you don't have a mobile phone? What if you don't have credit for a mobile phone? What if you can't get online?
All good questions. So this visa processing centre in Lille is going to remain. The reluctance to have one in Calais is apparently because they're worried about it being besieged by others and, of course, exploited by people smugglers. There may be some sympathy with that. But again, we come back to the original point about the speed with which people need to be processed. Just some numbers here that I found. Number of applications opened, 17,700. Applications submitted, 8,900. Applications in process, 8,800. So of the 8,900 who have submitted applications, only 100 of them have so far been processed. So the sluggishness of this system is just beyond compare. Having said that, as Tom will know, back to my original point about the Home Office, they haven't put in the prep for this. To be fair, let's have a little bit of sympathy for the civil servants here, because 5 minutes ago they were processing Afghanistani refugees who, by the way, are still in hotels. They've also had to deal with people who want to come back from Hong Kong. There wasn't the preparedness in place to switch to this, and it has been done sluggishly and badly because, as a department, it is dysfunctional, too unwieldy, and absolutely tied up in red tape. So for the people on the ground who are now coming thousands of miles across the whole of Europe to try and get here, it is an unmitigated disaster.
But also two blokes on the ground with a trestle table, a bag of crisps and some Kit Kats. We heard of the British man. He wanted a visa for his wife after fleeing Odessa. British officials demanded she show her childhood vaccination records for TB. I mean, he gave up and went to Spain. I want to put that point to you, Tom, about these people fleeing. You've got to think of the nuts and bolts of having a mobile phone in Europe, and whether you've even got credit on your phone to be able to apply online for something that's going to happen 5 days down the line.
I had a lady ring my show the other night who is a British citizen and has family in Ukraine. She drove to Lviv to go and rescue them and bring them back. They have visas to come to the UK, visitors' visas, valid visas to come to the UK. They got held up in Calais by the British Border Force, who said, not sure we can admit you. Now, under any normal circumstances, they would have been able to walk through. But because there's a war on, they weren't allowed to come in. It's a bureaucratic nightmare. There's a question about whether the visa should be waived or not. Actually, that is, I think, secondary to how this process is administered in the first place. Camilla mentioned Afghanistan. People in Afghanistan were processed before they could come to the UK. It was the military and the Foreign Office that did that. And I don't understand why the military isn't being or their help isn't being sought by the Home Office in helping to process some of the people that are turning up at centres.
So, Tom, I think actually it has, because somebody's messaged me in the break to say that there was I think it was a press release that was dropped last night saying that the MOD now is helping out the Home Office, which always happens. You know, everything goes wrong, it's bring in the military. So apparently they are now helping to administrate.
Has that statement that Priti Patel's made there gone any way to kind of rectify the shambles that we started with, that we were talking
Not
about?
at this stage. I mean, it's all going to be, the proof of the pudding is going to be in the eating. But I mean, if you've still got situations where you've got, as you say, mothers and children waiting days and being diverted miles to come into this country when there is a public appetite from a humanitarian or otherwise to have people in here. Also, why not give more authority to those already in Ukraine to help administer the application process for their relatives? You know, we're looking at this situation from people fleeing with the bags, the possessions they've got in their hands, having to put all of this paperwork through. Surely there needs to be some sort of devolved process to the relatives in this country. Why not set up centres around the country to have people process their relatives when they're in the safety of Britain?
Or get them in and put them in one of these, you know, sort of empty Nightingale hospitals so that they can at least get warm and get fed, get looked after, get a bed, get something for the kids. The thing, Tom, here is, you know, you look across that river, you know, to House of Commons just down the way, and you think that the people within it, not just the MPs, but that huge civil service that we have, would have some sort of foresight, because this wasn't a surprise. This has happened weeks ago. The minute those illegal, cruel, vicious forces crossed that border, then surely, because we were talking about it, everyone else down there who could act upon it would have said, there's going to be a refugee crisis here. We knew that weeks ago.
And the British government was saying for weeks before Russian troops stepped into Ukraine that this was going to happen. So it's not even at the point of invasion that people start to go, oh, my God, there's going to be a refugee crisis. The government had been saying for weeks that this was going to happen in the first place. So you're right. And ultimately what this boils down to is for the last 10 days, what Priti Patel has announced amounts to mostly thin air. The second version, the second pillar of the way in which Ukrainians can come in, the humanitarian visa support route, hasn't even been announced yet. Michael Gove's doing that later. Yeah. So that doesn't even exist yet.
No, it doesn't.
So
Nothing's
this
been
is
done
like
on that.
Schrodinger's visa scheme for refugees, and the people at the end of it that are suffering are those who are fleeing war. So let's see if this makes it better. Let's see if this gets it right. But I'm afraid I wouldn't hold out too much.
That's a good point. Quickly, so there's the family scheme, and then there's the local sponsorship scheme. I spoke to insiders in government yesterday to write a piece for the Telegraph. The Department for Levelling Up hasn't even started that yet. So you go to a website and you don't go anywhere. You click on something and nothing happens. Somebody else in the Home Office was saying, who used to work at the Home Office, unfortunately the attitude is always, we've got to keep people out and we shouldn't let them in unless there are lots and lots of paperwork and extenuating circumstances. There's kind of been a divorce here between the processing and the compassion. You know, how do we keep people out? How do we control this? How do we look at paperwork? How do we make sure, oh my goodness, it could be exploited by criminals, rather than, good grief, there is a humanitarian emergency on our doorstep, and therefore sometimes the rules need to be changed in order to do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what's happened
well
here.
said. Thank you both. Thank you for staying a lot longer than you were meant to as well. We really appreciate your time. Thank you.